Yo guys, so I want to show you how I created a lot of the effects that you saw in my painted fields montage for completely free with no plugins. You can do some insane stuff with this, so make sure you subscribe because you'll enjoy my videos, and don't forget to like this video because it helps the channel grow. You also want to stay until the end of the video because I'm going to include crucial tips and advice as to how to make this workflow actually work. My links and info are in the description below if you want to reach out or follow me. So thank you, enjoy, and I love you. Let's get into it. So you take your original cinematic. This is going to be part of your main composition, and you do want to be selective about the exact portion that you're going with. So for here, I'm just gonna cut out and use just this part. So when you're doing your footage for this, there are a couple things you want to be aware of. You want to avoid having too much movement or excessive 3D dimension. It's going to be hard for that software to synthesize the movement and generate an appealing output if there's too much going on in terms of 3D movement. So I have this portion cut out, and I'm just gonna Control-Shift-C to pre-comp that and just name that cinematic. Cool. So just so you know, my comp size is 30 frames per second at 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to open this cinematic and want to export this section as a PNG sequence. So I go to Output Module and change that to PNG sequence. And you'll see why. I'm just going to make a new folder called Tutorial. And I'm just going to make a folder called Video. And then I'm going to open this up and put this PNG sequence into that folder, and I just want the file name to be 3 number signs so it only exports the frame numbers. And I'm actually going to go out and make 2 other folders. I'm going to make a folder called JPEGs, and I'm going to make a folder called keyframes, just so I can set myself up, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a bit. So I would just open up this video one and export the PNG sequence into that. So once you have this image sequence, you can stylize it however you want, because you're essentially just going to need 1 or 2 keyframes for the Ebsynth to work with. To show the artist what I wanted the painting to look like, I looked up Google Deep Dream, and this is a neural network that identifies any patterns in your image based on a database of millions of pictures and fractals that it uses to generate an output depending on the style that you choose. So all you need to do is choose a frame from your image sequence that you rendered out, and you need to make sure that you remember which frame from the sequence you're using as your keyframe, because that's something you'll have to tell Ebsynth when you import it. So usually I'll just make a new tab, type in the frame number, and then that way I don't forget. So I go with a style that I think looks cool, and you can use any styles. I have a collection of my own styles and some popular ones. Go with whatever settings you want and generate that. So while you're waiting for this to generate, what you're going to want to do is open up Spotify here and then search up Shilarious, and then once you click this, you can just go ahead and click this follow button, and that'll just speed up your computer so that this generates a bit faster. So originally I wanted this output to be an example that the artist could base her painting off of, and then when it finished generating, I realized that this was actually the process I wanted to go with. So I mean, if any digital artists want to paint a frame for me, I'm open to using it for cool animation, because you know, in this case, unfortunately, technology had resulted in me neglecting talented artists, and I know you guys are out there. And so when I was first doing this and messing with this process, the outcomes, they just did not look good. I had to do several attempts because it was my first time doing it, and sometimes the background would just look hella weird, or the face would get too distorted, or the camera movement threw off the motion, and it just made some odd looking sequences. And I tried using a green screen and it just kind of messed up the background. Just with any effects, it's a matter of trying it until it works. So I got my generated image, so I just saved that and put it in my JPEGs folder, and then I'm just going to name this Deep Dream 1, and you can name it whatever. Because I did so many failed attempts and stuff, I would actually have a bunch of these JPEGs, and I would then just layer them over. So for instance, if I don't like this one, then I'll just go back and try to get a better look. I went ahead and did another variation, and I'm just going to name that Deep Dream 2. So I have these JPEGs that I'm downloading, but I rendered my original sequence in 1920 by 1080 PNGs. So all I did was I put this into After Effects, and to make sure it was the right frame, I went to frame 197, and then I would just scale this up to 150, and to maintain quality, just add a little bit of sharpen, and then add some contrast. And so at full res, this looks pretty good. And then I would put the second JPEG into that, scale it up, and then mess with the blending modes and opacities to get a picture that I like. And then I would just export that as a single frame. and make sure that it's a PNG, and then I would name this 197 and put it in the keyframe folder. So I render that, and then all I have to do is open up Ebsynth, open up File Explorer, and locate the folders for video and keyframes. So Ebsynth actually just came out with the second version of their beta, and during the time that I was using it, it was still in its earlier stage, which basically meant it was incredibly slow to compute and you had to manually put in the numbers, so it was kind of a pain in the butt. And so now it's much faster and they made the interface slightly easier to use. And you can even export straight to After Effects, so if you want to do something like this, there is a free link to Ebsynth in the description. So I just opened up Ebsynth, dragged the keyframes onto the keyframes and the video onto the video, and then there are some advanced settings that you can mess with if you want. Weight is basically just the amount that it's going to use the style from the keyframe onto the original sequence. I usually keep the settings the same, and if anything I'll adjust the deflicker, which is just how much it resolves excess movement in the motion. And then all you do is run all. And if my scene has more objects or motion going on, then I'll just add more keyframes. And the great thing is you don't need to spend any time trying to tell Ebsynth where the pictures are from, because it just locates their path right away. So I got that synth, and then I had this cool animation, and I could just export that straight to After Effects. Or I could just right click and import through choosing one of the images. And then boom, I would just be left with this dope sequence to bring my video to the next level and do something pretty unique. And then let's take this to the next level. You can obviously color and alter the sequence however you want in your compositing software. And in my case, since I had to mess around with several trials and I failed so many times, I would actually layer several sequences on top of one another. And then one thing I enjoyed doing was putting in a splatter animation. This is in my editing pack, which is linked in the description below, so if you don't have that, I highly recommend you get that because there are a lot of important presets, overlays, sound effects, all that. Make sure to check that out. And then I would make the Ebsynth output illuminate to that splatter. And then if I just scale this up a little and messed with the timing, I got this cool effect of the edges almost kind of appearing on a canvas, so I thought it made the effect even a little bit better. And then since the original cinematic is in the background, I can even add some effects like camera lens blur or cartoon. So I like the way that these elements combined. And then after a while, once you're done messing with it, the output looks amazing. And your footage might originally be at 60 FPS, and that's what you want to synthesize. But that's going to double the amount of frames for Ebsynth, so it's probably not an efficient choice. And so what I did is just export the original sequence in 30 FPS, and I used that for Ebsynth. I just recommend that, as with any effect, it fits in and it matches the color scheme and the vibe of the rest of the video. So, a quick recap of what I did. I converted the original sequence to a PNG sequence, I chose the frame to upload to Deep Dream and generated a keyframe, and then I downloaded that image and matched it to the right file type and dimensions, and then I imported the keyframes and video sequence into Ebsynth, and then I took that Ebsynth sequence into editing software and adjusted it as I wanted. And that was pretty much all of it, so it's a pretty simple process for an effect that looks cool and stands out. I hope you guys enjoyed, and again, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure to listen to my music on all platforms under the name Shalarius to support me. Links to that are in the description because I want you guys to hear that, and comment your thoughts down below. Okay, I love you guys and enjoy. Peace.